Grandma Rose always said, "Baby, the most powerful thing a wounded woman can do is not revenge. It's not confrontation. It's not even forgiveness. The most powerful thing she can do is bloom. Right where the hurt happened. Right in the middle of the season that tried to break her. Just bloom." Beatrice was blooming. Not performing it. Not forcing it. Not wearing happiness like a costume stitched together from pride and determination to show the world she had survived. Actually, genuinely, from the inside out, blooming the way a woman blooms when she has finally stopped apologizing for her own existence and started simply, fully, unapologetically living it. For months after the twins arrived, her life looked nothing like the one she had left behind. It looked better. It looked like Sunday mornings with the balcony doors thrown open and Seoul's skyline breathing gold in the distance. The city doing what cities do. Moving, living, completely indifferent. While inside the apartment everything was warm and specific and chosen. It looked like the baby boy, Elijah, named for Ethan's father, propped on a soft blanket on the living room floor, examining his own hands with the focused, unblinking intensity of a philosopher confronting a great mystery, occasionally looking up to confirm that his mother was still in the room and then returning to the investigation. It looked like the baby girl Grace, named for the thing Beatrice had finally extended to herself, sleeping against her chest with that boneless, total, absolute trust that only an infant can give and only a mother can fully receive, her small weight warm and heavy and more real than anything Beatrice had ever held. It looked like Ethan in the kitchen at 6 a.m. in a white t-shirt and loose pants, hair uncombed, coffee in one hand, talking softly to Elijah about the morning. Not baby talk, actual conversation, reporting the weather, describing what was happening outside the window, treating the 4-month-old like someone whose opinion on the day deserved to be solicited. Elijah listening with enormous round eyes and the solemn attention of someone taking notes. It looked like Grandma Rose at the kitchen table with her Bible open on one side and her tea on the other and a baby photograph on her phone screen that she was texting to someone in Atlanta with the caption "My babies," because she had decided, somewhere around week 2, that they were hers as much as anyone's and nobody was going to argue the point. It looked like a home. A real one. Not a performance of a home. Not the carefully arranged surfaces and managed silences of the life she had spent 6 years trying to hold together. A real home. Loud with baby sounds and Grandma Rose's hymns and Ethan's quiet voice and the ordinary, irreplaceable noise of people who belong to each other living their lives without pretense. Beatrice stood in the doorway of the living room one Tuesday morning watching all of it and felt something move through her that she had no precise word for. Something enormous and quiet and deeply, permanently settled. Like a foundation being poured. Like something that would hold. She had been here before. Standing in a doorway watching a life. But the last time she had been watching someone else's. This time, unmistakably, irrevocably, completely, she was watching her own. She pressed her lips to Grace's head. The baby stirred softly, sighed the enormous sigh of someone who had assessed the situation and found it acceptable, and went back to sleep. Beatrice closed her eyes. She thought about the yellow nursery they had painted 2 years into her marriage. The pale, hopeful yellow of it. The way she had stood in the doorway of that empty room and allowed herself, carefully and with great internal negotiation, to imagine it full. She thought about the clinic rooms, the injections, the 4 failed treatments and the 4 times hope had been handed back to her crumpled and unusable. She thought about a bathroom floor, an apology for her own body, 6 years of making herself smaller to fit inside a life that had never actually been built for her. And then she opened her eyes, and looked at what was in front of her instead. Elijah had discovered his feet. He was staring at them with an expression of profound personal betrayal, as though they had appeared without his permission and he was not yet sure how he felt about them. Ethan, noticing, crouched down beside him and said something serious and low, gesturing at his own feet in a way that seemed to be an explanation. Beatrice smiled. Full. Unguarded. The kind of smile that came from so deep inside her she couldn't have stopped it if she tried. This, she thought. This is what it was always supposed to look like. It was Grandma Rose who saw it first. She had developed, in the months since arriving in Seoul, a relationship with her phone that would have surprised anyone who had known her before. She had mastered the camera, deploying it with the focused dedication of someone documenting something historically significant, which in her view she was, and she had discovered, with great enthusiasm, social media. She was at the kitchen table on a Wednesday morning, phone in hand, tea cooling beside her, when she made a sound. Not a loud sound, just a small, quiet, knowing sound. The kind Grandma Rose made when something confirmed what she had already known for a long time. "Rose." Beatrice looked up from the nursing chair where she was feeding Grace. "What is it?" Her grandmother turned the phone slowly and held it up. Beatrice leaned forward to look. It was a photograph from last Saturday, the rooftop dinner for Ethan's company anniversary. She and Ethan at the edge of the terrace, the city blazing behind them in full evening gold, both of them mid-laugh at something his colleague Minjun had said that she could no longer remember but which had apparently been extraordinarily funny because she was laughing with her whole face, her whole body, the way she laughed now, without editing, without checking herself, without the background calculation of how she appeared. She was wearing the burgundy dress. Her hair was down and full, and Ethan was looking at her. Not at the camera. Not at the city. Not at the hundreds of guests behind them. Her. With the specific, complete, unhurried attention that she had come to know as simply the way he looked at her. Like she was the most interesting thing in any room they occupied together. Like looking at her was not an action he performed but a state he existed in. The photograph had been reposted by a lifestyle account with 200,000 followers. The caption read, "This man looks at his wife like she personally invented happiness. We want this. We deserve this. We will not settle for less." The comments numbered in the thousands. "God is so good. The way he is looking at her. The way he is looking at her. She glowed up and I am not okay. This is what healing looks like when it finishes. I showed this to my husband and said study." Beatrice stared at the photograph for a long time. At herself. At the woman in the burgundy dress laughing without reservation beside a man whose eyes had never once in all the months she had known him looked anywhere other than exactly where she was. She had spent so many years not recognizing herself in photographs, looking at images of her own face and seeing the careful management of it, the controlled smile, the positioned joy, the performance of a woman who was fine and needed the world to believe it. This woman in the photograph was not performing anything. This woman was simply, completely, wholly herself. "Baby?" Grandma Rose said from across the table, her voice warm and unhurried. "The world can see what I have known your whole life." Beatrice looked up. "That you were always this woman," her grandmother said. "This laughing, glowing, fully alive woman. You were always her." A pause. "You just needed the right conditions to grow into her." The baby girl made a small demanding sound. Beatrice looked down at Grace. The baby's eyes were open, dark and serious and completely alert, looking up at her mother with that characteristic taking everything in gaze that she had arrived with on her very first day and had not changed since. Like she had come into the world already paying close attention and intended to continue. Beatrice lifted her to her shoulder, felt the warm, solid weight of her, felt the small hands gripping her dress with that instinctive, trusting, absolute hold. She looked up at Ethan. He was leaning in the kitchen doorway now, coffee in hand, watching her with those dark, steady eyes. "You saw it," she said. "Minjun sent it to me at midnight," he said. "Apparently it has been shared 40,000 times." She looked back at the photograph on the phone. At the woman she was now. "Is that strange for you?" He was quiet for a moment, considering it honestly the way he always did. "No," he said finally, "because they are only seeing what has always been true." He looked at her steadily. "I am glad the world can see it. You deserve to be seen." Beatrice felt her chest fill with something warm and enormous. She handed Grace to Grandma Rose, who received her with the practiced ease of a woman who had been waiting for exactly this handoff. Stood up, crossed the kitchen, and pressed her lips to Ethan's jaw. He turned his face slightly, pressed his lips to her temple. His hand came to the back of her head, light and warm. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing me first," she thought. "Before the photograph. Before the 40,000 shares. Before the world caught up. For standing in a road on the worst night of my life and handing me a card and saying, 'In case tonight gets harder before it gets easier.' For showing up every ordinary day and meaning it every time. For everything," she said. He held her for a moment. Then Elijah, from the living room floor, made a sound of extreme dissatisfaction about being left out of whatever was happening in the kitchen. and they both laughed and went to him. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. Beatrice was at the desk in her home office, the bright, south-facing room that Ethan had arranged without being asked because he had noticed, early and carefully, that she worked best in good light, with Grace in the bassinet beside her making the small, conversational sounds of an infant who was awake and had opinions about it. Beatrice was halfway through a translation contract, pen moving, coffee warm, the afternoon quiet and productive around her. She heard her grandmother's voice from the living room, low and steady, choosing every word. She heard a name. She set her pen down. She could not hear everything, just pieces carried on the apartment's quiet. I know, Margaret. I understand. A pause. Yes. I saw the photographs. Another pause, longer. Margaret, listen to me carefully now. And then Grandma Rose's voice shifting into the register she used when she was saying something final. Warm but immovable. The voice of a woman who loved people deeply and protected her own fiercely and never confused the two obligations. Your son made his choices. My granddaughter made hers. And the life she has built is not something he gets to walk back into because the sight of her joy has finally made him understand what he threw away. That is not how this works, Margaret. That is not how any of this works. Beatrice sat very still. Her pen was on the desk. Her hands were in her lap. The baby monitor beside her showed the steady green light of Elijah sleeping soundly in the nursery. Margaret, Chris's mother, a woman she had genuinely loved. A woman who had called her daughter and sat beside her in waiting rooms and wept quietly and held her hand through two of the worst afternoons of her life. She pressed her fingers to her mouth, breathed. Then Grandma Rose's voice came once more. Quieter now, gentler, but no less certain. Tell your son I am happy to pray for his healing, Margaret. Genuinely. But his healing does not live in my granddaughter's doorway. It lives in his own life, in his own mirror. Beatrice has already done the work. She is already free. And the kindest thing Christopher can do for her now, the only thing he can give her that she actually needs from him, is to let her stay that way. A pause. Then, yes, I know. Tell him I said that. The call ended. Silence settled over the apartment like something placed there deliberately. Grace made a sound in the bassinet. Not distressed, just present. Just reminding her mother that she was there. Beatrice turned to look at her daughter. Grace's eyes were wide open. That enormous, dark, taking everything in gaze fixed on her mother's face with the specific, complete attention of someone who had decided that her mother's face was the most important landscape in existence and was studying it accordingly. Beatrice reached into the bassinet and lifted her out, held her against her chest with both hands, pressed her lips to the top of her head and stayed there, breathing her in, feeling the warm, impossible, perfect weight of her. You are never going to apologize for existing, she whispered against her daughter's hair. Not for one single day of your life. Not for what your body can or cannot do. Not for being too much or not enough. Not for any reason. Her voice cracked slightly. She steadied it. You are whole, Grace. You came into this world whole. And nothing and no one gets to take that from you. She paused. Do you hear me? Grace blinked, grabbed a fistful of her mother's dress, held on with everything she had. Grandma Rose appeared in the office doorway. Beatrice looked at her. Her grandmother looked back. I heard, Beatrice said quietly. Her grandmother nodded once, crossed the room, sat in the chair that had become hers, the one with the good back support and the window view, and folded her hands in her lap with the settled patience of a woman who was prepared to sit in this moment for as long as it needed. How do you feel? She asked. Beatrice sat with the question honestly, checked herself the way she had learned to, not performing fine, not swallowing hard and moving past it before the feeling had finished arriving, but actually sitting with it, letting it be what it was. I feel sorry for him, she said finally. Not the old kind, not the sharp, wounded kind that lives right next to anger. She looked down at Grace in her arms. The quiet kind, the kind you feel for someone who stood at the edge of something extraordinary and only understood its value from the wrong side of losing it. She paused. And I feel grateful. Grandma Rose raised an eyebrow. Grateful that it happened the way it did, Beatrice said. Because if it hadn't... She looked around the room. The south-facing light, the bassinet, the baby monitor. The home built around her with quiet, deliberate love. I wouldn't be here. None of this would exist. She met her grandmother's eyes. Every hard thing led me to this. To Elijah and Grace. To Ethan. To who I am right now. A pause. I wouldn't trade this version of my life for the one I thought I wanted. Grandma Rose was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and covered Beatrice's hand with hers. Warm, dry, certain. Every safe place Beatrice had ever known. Compressed into one touch. You know what your grandfather said, she began. When I told him I had prayed for you to find a good man, Beatrice shook her head. He said, Rose, stop praying for a man. Pray for her wholeness. A whole woman draws the right person to her like light draws everything that needs warmth. Pray for her wholeness and trust God with the rest. She squeezed Beatrice's hand. So I did. Her eyes were bright and steady and full of a private, grateful certainty. And look what the rest turned out to be. Grace yawned, her entire tiny face involved in it. Eyes squeezing shut, mouth opening wide. The total, uncomplicated commitment of a baby expressing a feeling. Beatrice laughed. Grandma Rose laughed. And the afternoon continued. He showed up on a Friday. She was coming back from the pharmacy. Elijah strapped to her chest in the baby carrier, his cheek warm against her collarbone, his eyes at half-mast in the drowsy, boneless contentment of an infant who has assessed the world and found it satisfactory. She was wearing a simple wrap dress, hair in a loose natural, no makeup, thinking about nothing more significant than whether Grace would be awake when she got upstairs and whether Grandma Rose had remembered to take her afternoon medication. She pushed through the lobby doors and stopped. Chris was standing by the entrance. He looked different from the man she remembered. Thinner. The particular unslept quality of someone who had not been resting well for months. Not days, months. The accumulated weight of it visible in the lines around his eyes and the set of his jaw. His clothes were neat. The effort of his appearance was visible and somehow made it worse. The effort of a man trying to hold himself together by the surface when the interior had come undone. He saw her at the exact moment she saw him. Neither of them moved. 3 full seconds of absolute stillness. And then his eyes dropped. To Elijah. To the baby boy strapped against her chest. 4 months old, round-cheeked, drowsy. One small fist curled against his mother's collarbone. Utterly unaware of the enormous significance of this particular moment in the lobby of this particular building. Something happened to Chris's face. She had known this man for 9 years. She had watched his face in every kind of moment. Joy, anger, boredom. The careful blankness he wore when he was hiding something. She thought she knew every version of his face. She had never seen this one. Simply fell. Not dramatically. Without noise. Without performance. The way a structure falls when the thing that was holding it together from the inside finally gives way. His jaw worked. His eyes went bright and wet and he pressed his lips together so hard they went white and he looked at that baby. At Elijah, for months old, alive, real, here against all the odds medicine had assigned him. And she watched a man understand in one unguarded moment the full, irreversible, total weight of every single choice he had ever made. She did not feel triumph. She had imagined, in the abstract, that she might. That if she ever stood in front of Chris with the life she had built she would feel something sharp and vindicating. The specific satisfaction of a woman who was told she was broken standing in front of the man who told her that with proof of her wholeness in her arms. She felt none of that. She felt something quieter, older, more complete. She felt free. Free of him. Free of the version of herself that had needed his validation to feel real. Free of the 4 years of apology and the bathroom floor and the clinic rooms and every morning she had looked in the mirror and taken inventory of her own insufficiencies like a woman preparing a case against herself. She was free. And standing in this lobby with her son on her chest and her daughter upstairs and the man who loved her right somewhere in this building, she understood that freedom not as the absence of pain but as its completion. She had moved all the way through it. And she was on the other side. Chris, she said. Her voice was even, warm in the uncomplicated way of someone who had no wound left for his presence to find. Beatrice. His voice was barely there. Almost nothing. He looked at the baby one more time. His throat moved. Is he? Elijah, she said. He's 4 months. The name landed on him visibly. like a weight placed on something already straining. And the girl, he said. He had seen the photographs. Of course he had. Grace. She's upstairs with her great-grandmother. A pause. She has her father's eyes. Something in his face when she said father, a flinch. Small and honest and completely unguarded. The flinch of a man who understood exactly what that word meant in this sentence and what it did not mean. Beatrice. He stopped. His jaw was tight. He was fighting to hold himself together in front of her, and she could see the effort of it. I am so sorry. The words came out stripped of everything except their own weight. No decoration. No framing. Just the plain, honest, too-late truth of a man who understood completely and could do nothing with that understanding now except offer it. For all of it. For what I did. For what I let you believe about yourself. His voice cracked. He pressed through it. You were never the problem. You were never broken. You were always everything. And he stopped, swallowed hard. I just wasn't capable of deserving it. The lobby was very quiet. Elijah stirred against her chest, made a small sound. She reached up and placed her palm on the back of his head, that instinctive maternal steadying, and the baby settled back into his drowsiness immediately, soothed by the certainty of her hand. She looked at Chris. I know you're sorry, she said, gently, directly. And I believe you. She paused. I spent 4 years believing I was broken, Chris. 4 years carrying your choices as though they were my verdict. And all of that. Her voice was steady, unhurried, carrying every single thing she had lived through to arrive at this sentence. All of it led me here, to my son, to my daughter, to a man who sees me completely. She paused. So I forgive you, not because you've earned it, but because I deserve to put it down. His eyes were wet. He did not try to hide it. He nodded, once, small and honest and without any expectation of what it might change. A sound from behind her. She turned. Ethan was in the lobby entrance. He had come down from upstairs. She understood instantly that Grandma Rose had seen from the window and had done what grandmothers who love fiercely and watch carefully always do. He stood just inside the lobby doors, one hand loose at his side, Grace in the crook of his left arm. The baby girl was wide awake and conducting her characteristic serious investigation of the lobby. The ceiling, the light fixtures, the potted plant by the elevator, with the methodical attention of someone building a comprehensive understanding of a new environment. His eyes found Beatrice first. They always found her first. The question in them was quiet and direct. Are you okay? She held his gaze for one warm, certain second. I'm okay. He crossed the lobby, stood beside her. His free hand found the small of her back, that light, present, certain touch, not possessive, not performing, simply the touch of a man for whom standing beside this woman had become as natural as breathing. He looked at Chris. Chris looked at him. In the lobby of that building on a Friday afternoon in Seoul, with 2 babies between them and a woman who had walked through fire and come out whole. Something passed between the 2 men that required no words and lasted no longer than 5 seconds. Chris looked at Beatrice one final time. At the woman she was now, standing straight and unafraid and completely at peace, holding her son, beside a man whose eyes had never once in all the time she had known him found anywhere more important to be than exactly where she was. He nodded. Once. Small. Final. Honest. She nodded back, and he walked through the lobby doors, back through the building entrance, back into a life he now had to figure out how to live inside with everything he now knew about himself. The doors closed behind him, softly, without ceremony, just a door closing on a chapter that had been over for a long time. The lobby was quiet. Elijah made a small, satisfied sound against her chest, the sound of an infant who had been asleep and was now reconsidering, and opened his eyes, found his mother's face, closed them again, decided the world could wait. Grace, from Ethan's arm, reached across the small space between her parents and grabbed a fistful of Beatrice's hair with both hands, which she had recently identified as one of the more rewarding activities available to her. Beatrice winced, laughed softly. Ethan reached over with patient, practiced gentleness and unpeeled the tiny fingers one by one. Grace, he said, in the loving, completely ineffective tone of a father addressing an infant who had absolutely no intention of modifying her behavior. Grace looked at him with enormous eyes, considered his position, grabbed Beatrice's hair again with her other hand. Beatrice laughed harder. Ethan looked at her. This laugh, the whole face unguarded one. The one that came from the same deep place inside her as the woman in the photograph. And something in his expression went warm and quiet and completely undefended. "Let's go upstairs," she said. "Yes," he said. They went home. That evening, after the babies were bathed and fed and sleeping with the total committed unconsciousness of infants who had fully expended themselves on the day, Beatrice sat with Grandma Rose on the balcony. Seoul was beautiful at this hour. All light and distance and the particular quality of a city evening that had become her favorite in all the months she had lived here. Warm enough to sit outside. Cool enough for the blanket her grandmother had brought out and placed around her shoulders without being asked. Because that was Grandma Rose. Always the blanket before you knew you needed it. They sat in the comfortable silence of two women who had been through enough together that silence between them held no awkwardness. Only peace. The city below and the stars beginning above and the faint, warm sound of Ethan inside moving quietly through the apartment, checking on the babies. His low voice occasionally reaching them through the open balcony door like something steady and permanent. "He looked broken," Beatrice said finally. Grandma Rose did not ask who. "I know. I didn't expect to feel sorry for him." "That is because you have a good heart," her grandmother said simply. "You always did. Even when he did not deserve it." Beatrice looked at the city. "Did I do the right thing? Forgiving him like that?" Grandma Rose turned to look at her. The city light fell across her face. This woman, 74 years old, sharp and warm and full of more love than most people accumulated in 2 lifetimes. And her expression was the one Beatrice had known her whole life. The one that said, "I see you completely. Every part. And I am not afraid of any of it." "Baby," she said, "forgiveness is not a gift you give to the person who hurt you." Her voice was low and certain and carried the weight of a woman who had lived long enough to know the difference between wisdom and opinion. "It is a gift you give to yourself. It is how you take back the space inside your chest that their wrongdoing has been occupying without permission." She paused. "You walked into that lobby today carrying your son, standing beside the man who loves you, right? And you looked your past in the face and you said, 'I release you, not because you deserve it, because I deserve to be free.'" Her voice softened. "That is not weakness, Beatrice. That is the most extraordinary kind of strength a woman can possess." Beatrice felt her throat tighten. She looked at the city so her grandmother would not see her eyes. She heard the balcony door open. Ethan appeared with 2 cups of tea, hers with honey, his without, because he had learned this early and never forgotten it. He sat in the chair beside her without asking what they had been talking about, without inserting himself into the emotion of the moment, without doing anything except being exactly and completely present. He handed her the cup. She took it. He looked at the city. She reached over and took his hand. He turned it over and held hers, warm, certain, without condition, the way he had held it the first time and every time since. Grandma Rose looked at the two of them sitting there, hands linked, the city before them, the sleeping babies inside, the whole, repaired, magnificent life Beatrice had built from the rubble of the one that had broken her. She picked up her tea, took a long, deep, satisfied sip. "You know what your grandfather would say right now?" she said. "What?" Beatrice asked. Grandma Rose smiled. The private, remembering, completely happy kind. The smile of a woman thinking about a man she had loved for 51 years and still missed every day. "He would look at all of this," she said. "And he would look at me and he would say, 'Rose, I told you, pray for her wholeness. The rest follows.'" The city glittered below them. The stars came out above. And Beatrice, sitting on a balcony in Seoul with her grandmother's wisdom wrapped around her like the blanket on her shoulders and her husband's hand warm in hers and her babies sleeping peacefully just inside the door and her whole, unbroken, magnificent life spread before her like something that had always been waiting. Always been hers. Always been true. Beatrice smiled. Full, bright, completely unguarded. And bloomed. Besties, if the lobby scene broke you, if watching Chris see those babies and finally understand what his choices cost him gave you everything you needed today, drop a comment and tell me. And if you are the woman who forgave someone not because they deserved it but because you deserve to be free, this comment section belongs to you today. Share this story with one woman who is still carrying someone else's choices inside her chest. She needs to put it down. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. And remember what Grandma Rose said, pray for your wholeness. The rest follows. See you in the next one, besties.